You're watching HuffPost Live. I'm Nancy Red. Now, according to the CDC, childhood obesity has more than doubled in children and tripled in adolescents in the past 30 years. In hopes of bucking this trend, nearly 19 states across the country are requiring schools to send home mandatory BMI reports to parents. Though well-intentioned, some argue that these so-called fat letters can trigger unhealthy eating behaviors and lower kids' self-esteem. So, should schools be responsible for monitoring a student's weight? Joining us, we have in our Google Hangout, Bill Anderson. He's a licensed psychotherapist specializing in weight control. Josh Brooks, a blogger at opraclaim.com. Allison Nizer, a health scientist at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And on set, we're joined by the wonderful Claire Misko. She's an expert on body image and a project consultant for Proud to Be Me. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. This is a very important conversation. First and foremost, for people who haven't been keeping up with the news, what are these letters that are being sent home, these so-called fat letters?
Well, schools are, in an effort to address the obesity epidemic, are weighing students and sending letters home to the parents of students who are considered to be in a potentially dangerous zone that puts them at risk for obesity. And while I agree with you that these letters are well-intentioned, I think they have the potential to do more harm than good. We hear so much about the obesity epidemic in this country, but we also have an epidemic of eating disorders and poor body image. 30 million Americans struggle with eating disorders. And so, we hear at the National Eating Disorders Association from so many young people who find this experience of being weighed at school very triggering. And they cite it as, the start of their struggles with eating disorders and poor body image. So, we're really concerned about this. And we think that, again, we don't want to be, in our efforts to address one epidemic, we don't want to be adding fuel to the fire of another one.
Absolutely, and just to give people a little context, this is an example of a letter that was actually used in a Los Angeles school district that was sent out to parents and guardians, basically saying what happened and what the scores are. So it's a very long letter. It looks just like any letter that a student would get for other things. Kyle Goldfinch has a comment here. I feel a little stumped. I'm against bullying, but I also believe that schools should create a positive environment. So a question, when do you think it's okay to tell their students about a health problem? In what way is ethically correct? Doctor, in your opinion, what are the pros and cons? To Kyle's questions, what are the pros and cons of sending a letter like this? And is this an ethically correct way to alert parents as to their child's well-being?
Now, are you addressing me or?
Yes, Dr. Nizer.
Oh, this is Allison. Yes. So the goals behind a BMI measurement program in schools, specifically for screening, is to prevent and reduce childhood obesity, to correct misperceptions of the parent or the child in their own weight status, and to motivate them to motivate the families to follow up with a medical care provider so they can get any guidance that they may need around an individual's weight status.
Well, I just want to jump in and say I think that one of the issues here is that BMI is not actually an accurate measure of health. And we are also hearing from a lot of kids who are getting sent home with these letters who, might have a high muscle mass or might be, really tall and big boned. And so they're experiencing this shame. And so we're basically using an inaccurate measure. BMI is not an accurate measure of health. And, that's another real issue that we need to address here. And another problem with using BMI as a way of measuring a kid's health.
Can I interject on that?
Yes, please, quick? Dr. Anderson.
This is Josh.
Oh, so sorry. Sorry, Josh.
So as an obese child, of course, and now an obese adult who's attempting to lose weight, as a kid, I never had an intervention like this. I never had a letter that was sent home or anyone who tried to reach out to me individually. And I believe these letters are doing good, but they're a broad strokes measure for something that we need specific help with. Like, I understand where you're coming from with causing eating disorders. But for kids like me, I was 125 pounds in the first grade, 360 pounds my junior year of high school. I'm not big boned. I'm not just muscular, as muscular as I am. But there's a certain point where you have to understand, I needed intervention as a child. And my parents evidently didn't see a problem with the way I was raised. I didn't even really understand that being big was a problem, other than getting bullied or having individual situations that would lead me to believe that, until I was already into my teens and was having back problems and degenerative arthritis in my knees due to my weight. So we definitely need something that we can give to kids that is going to assist them, especially like extreme cases like myself. So, like I said, this is a broad stroke solution, and that's where I see there's a problem with it.
My experience was very different than that. I was the fattest kid in school, and that was largely as a result of dieting that I started at 7 years old at the request of the pediatrician. And from there, it got worse. And we were weighed in school every year, and I can remember that was the most miserable week coming. I could actually, after a few years, hear the nurse coming up the hallway, dragging the scale, and I would have stomach aches that week, try to get out of it. It was humiliating, absolutely miserable, and I'm in touch with school nurses now who have to administer this program. In Florida here, the kids are weighed in 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade. And the kids who have a high BMI are sent letters, and the nurses have to call a certain number of them. And they dread that as much as the kids and the parents dread hearing from it. I don't think anybody really enjoys this. And my personal experience growing up was that being overweight and having to deal with that every day became the central experience of my life. I would not recommend it happening. Kids should be going to a doctor on a regular basis, and it's the pediatrician's duty, and they do. They bring this up to the kids and the parents.
Well, and that's an interesting point. Unfortunately, kids should, of course, be going to the doctor, but they don't always get the opportunity to, whether parents cannot afford it or they do not have the time to take them. And it makes this a complicated conversation when we're talking about what are the other ways that parents can be alerted, that children can be alerted if there is an issue that should be discussed. Like Mommy Lori Giarfino, discretion, people. These are impressionable kids. We put enough pressures on their looks. Let the healthcare workers and parents deal with this. Perhaps a letter to the child's doctor would be more appropriate. But to the experience of receiving the letter, L Boogie 399, my daughter was devastated to receive such a letter last year. I'm grateful that I exude confidence that she is more focused on being healthy versus being skinny.
Yeah, and I think this is what comes up so often, that there's this experience of shame. And it triggers this cycle, and we know that when kids feel shamed, shame is not a motivator for healthy behavior. So, even for kids who might be at risk for being overweight or obese, shaming them is not the way to encourage healthy behavior. And I'm all for educating all children about healthy behaviors. Let's teach all kids about how to eat healthy and exercise. Let's give all kids access to fresh, healthy foods at school. I mean, these are important ways that we can address these issues without singling out kids and making them feel ashamed of themselves.
To a certain extent. To a certain extent, are we already doing that though? Like, I know at least in Illinois here, like PE is mandatory. So, like, especially in high school, you had to take 4 years of some form of physical education, whether it be ROTC or regular gym class. I had health classes where I was taught how to eat nutritious meals and things like that. So, again, we're sending our kids to school and we're being taught generalities of, like, this is roughly what you should eat to maintain a healthy lifestyle. This is the exercise you should have. But with the letters, it's giving, like, a specific, like, targeted intervention to these people. Like, again, I don't agree that it's 100% correct in the way they're doing it, but I do believe that's a step in the right direction for what needs to be done against childhood obesity.
Josh, let me ask you, when was the first time that you wanted to lose weight?
I was 19 years old and had a herniated disc, and I couldn't stand up. And even later in life, I had to come back again, where I was bedridden for over 6 months.
Were you bullied as a kid?
I was, but I'm very charismatic and I like to have a good time, which is obviously a defense mechanism a lot of people that are obese get. So I had a lot of friends that would defend me, but yeah, I got bullied. The reason specifically that I remember being 125 pounds in the first grade was actually a teacher denied that I weighed that much, and during recess took me and weighed me because she denied it in front of the entire class and then confirmed it after weighing me in. So, I mean, there were even instances where teachers would call me out of my weight, but not in like a helping or assisting manner, but more of like a mocking manner.
Nobody suggested that you should lose weight?
I mean, my doctor, but even then, it wasn't even until much later. I mean, I'm 27 years old. The childhood obesity epidemic is more relatively new. Like all throughout elementary school, junior high, high school, never once heard from any type of person from my school or like an authority figure outside of a doctor that said that I should lose weight or get healthy.
And that actually does bring us to the point. You did mention that the letter itself isn't necessarily the best answer, but it's a step in the right direction. And the problem is trying to figure out when there are actual perhaps health issues or eating issues that can be addressed, so what would work? Do you think if your parents got this letter, would it have made a difference?
Well, I mean, honestly, if the parents don't realize, like I said, 125 pounds in first grade, you know there's a problem there. It's pretty visible, especially going 400 pounds into high school. Now, my dad was big. My mom is not. And, you know, that's just the way our family is. It was an accepted way to be my size because my father is bigger. But I see a lot, and you hear a lot of stories like, you know, I'm active in the fitness community now, of people have that aha moment where if you see like, oh, other people are even saying that my kid is sick, like here are some of the negative things and this is what could happen to my child, like he's on this path. Most parents are immediately going to think like, man, I never thought of that. Like I asked my mom today before I was on the show, and she had told me she got weighed in school when she was young, and that's, you know, 40 years ago. And what she had told me was that I asked her, I was like, did you imagine when I was in first grade that I would be as big as I am today? And she said she didn't. But if she had thought that, if anyone had told her that this could have been the result, she would have acted.
Well, I think the other issue is, you know, and Nancy, you asked this question about, well, you know, what happens after you get the letter? You know, is it effective? And, you know, for me, that's also a concern because of the doctor's experience. He pointed out that, you know, he started on a diet at a young age, which actually triggered a cycle of disordered eating. So the question then is, you know, if you're getting this information, then what are you doing with it? What are these schools then instructing parents to do? Because obesity is a very complex issue. I mean, we talk about the obesity epidemic in this very monolithic way, but there are a variety of different reasons that people reach a weight that is considered to be unhealthy. And dieting is actually the worst possible thing that you can do, and often does, as I said, trigger a cycle of disordered eating. So
how is dieting the worst possible thing you can do?
It conditions a person to value food in a different way and to experience the relaxation from restriction in a different way. It reinforces that behavior, actually gets you addicted to uncontrolled eating.
So you're saying someone who's, I'm 450 pounds now, that dieting is my worst option to lose weight?
I could help you with that problem.
And HuffPost
I mean, I've already
continue
lost over 50 pounds
segment.
myself, so I'm already down over 50 pounds myself working out and dieting. So I mean, I understand the difficulty of losing the weight. I'm just saying I don't think dieting is the worst.
Well,
thing
traditional dieting in the sense that I'm talking about, you know, calorie deprivation, and you know, it often does trigger very unhealthy behaviors. And we know that you know, 90+% of people who go on diets will gain the weight back, and often more than what they lost. So that's the concern: is what direction are we giving to people, and what's going to be effective in actually changing their behavior? And that's, you know, that I think is a real concern here too.
Dr. Nizer, really quickly, I want to get Dr. Nizer in here. You've been very patient, been very quiet. What's your take, Dr. Nizer?
Yes, so the CDC CDC doesn't have a stance for or against BMI screening programs in schools, body mass index screening programs. That's what we're specifically talking about, is measuring all the students' height and weight and then sending a letter home to parents. However, while we don't have a position for or against it, we have developed guidance because we do know that many schools and school districts are engaging in this practice. And as part of that guidance, it really talks about initiating a safe and supportive environment for all students, regardless of body shape or size, and that includes plenty of opportunities for physical activity, plenty of opportunities for healthy eating. Then if you do move forward with a BMI measurement program or a BMI screening program, then what happens is that we actually have identified safeguards so that individual schools can help prevent many of the concerns that are being brought up. We actually specifically outline some of the key points that should be included in a notification to parents, including reminding them that BMI is only a screening tool. The body mass index is appropriate for assessing weight status and identifying those individuals who are underweight, healthy weight, overweight, and obese. It is a screening tool, and ensuring that when you follow up, when you receive a notification that your child might be or at overweight or obese, that you need to follow up with a trained medical care provider to get a final diagnosis and to really identify those healthy habits that a child or your family can engage in to increase and improve your healthy dietary habits, as well as engage in more physical activity. In addition, I heard a lot about what schools can do. CDC actually has school health guidelines to promote healthy eating and physical activity. And those school health guidelines are evidence-based. They're based on the science. And what they have identified is that to address obesity in schools, you want to add plenty of opportunities through physical activity, through physical education, recess, ensuring that there are healthy food options available throughout the school day.
Yeah, I think a lot of our commenters agree with Dana Oronos. Why not instead contribute to students' health by keeping unhealthy foods out of the school menus? Also by making gym class mandatory for all students again. Lumen, I totally get it. When I was in school, the lunches were terrible. Hot dogs, pizza, chicken nuggets, fries, potato tots, and so much more. Rhonda Barry Moore, how about including PE back in schools, offering healthy lunches? And Claire, I think one of the issues is the letter is an interesting thing that's gotten people agitated. But letters in general in school, whether it's to announce a PTA meeting or school picture day, letters don't work. So what would work?
Well, I think, again, we have to, I think all of these suggestions are good. We have to make sure that all kids have access to fresh, healthy foods. We have to make sure that all kids are learning about healthy behaviors and, again, not singling out certain kids. We also know that by the time girls get to high school, 50% of them are already engaging in unhealthy weight control behaviors, and 30% of guys are. So, the body image concerns, this is an epidemic too. So we need to make sure that we're educating kids about healthy behaviors in a way that is not fear-based. It's not making them afraid of eating. It's not making them afraid of fat in this way that is really unhealthy. And I see so much of that in the kids that I work with. And so much of that fear is there and the insecurity. So we're really all about promoting body confidence and healthy behaviors.
Well, and we can see more about the work that you are doing right here with the website proudtobeme.org. Claire, we're grateful that you're able to join us. We're building a confidence where confidence rules. Also, more on our very own Josh Brooks right here at opreclaim.com. You can follow his journey. And more information on all of our other guests is in our resource well, which is underneath this video screen. Dr. Anderson, Dr. Nizer, Josh, and of course, Claire, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And please stay tuned because, as you know, the conversations always continue here at HuffPost Live, courtesy of Cadillac.